We have Rick Sapkin is going to give you a little introduction and welcome you to the Real Estate Roundtable. If that's okay with you, sir, and maybe it's objectionable, but
no, I'm just looking at a very hip Westerner with a cool beard, and I guess those are windows out to the Wild West.
What do you think of this COVID look?
I think it's cool. I think it's cool.
Well, thank you. You're looking
help sell some housing.
Yeah, you're looking very senatorial today. I was asked to make an introduction to you, and it is my pleasure to welcome my good friend, Senator Ron Wyden of Oregon. Senator Wyden is well known to many of you and a very good friend of the Real Estate Roundtable. The senator will soon formally become chairman of the Senate Committee on Finance, which he last served as chairman in the 113th Congress, 2014 and 15. Senator, 2021 marks your 41st year in Congress. You started when I think you were, 10? And he served in the House for 16 years before being elected to Senate in 1996. A little research was done, and there are only 2 current members who have served longer in Congress, Senator Pat Leahy and Representative Don Young. But because you've been able to fly under the radar screen and do so much good work, people leave you alone most of the time. From trade to healthcare to technology, policy to taxation, Senator Wyden has been an intellectual leader in the Senate. I know you care deeply about economic opportunity, open government, fairness, and building prosperity. You clearly have never shied away from the difficult issues, and you have always worked to build bipartisanship with everything you do. You have always pushed new ideas to your colleagues and fresh approaches to the difficult issues. Some of those ideas, like access to housing and infrastructure, I'm sure we'll hear today from you. So, Senator, it is my pleasure to introduce you, and thank you.
Rick, thank you for that unquestionably inflationary introduction. And it's good to be able to visit with all of you. I know we're in the virtual house rather than being able to do this in person, but soon we'll be able to do this again. I had this brief cup of coffee at the Finance Committee as chair before, and it was because Max Baucus was headed to China, and then Mitch McConnell, to a great extent, shut the Senate down. I think that there's some extraordinarily important work to do right now, and I'm just going to offer up a couple quick thoughts, and then let's go right to questions for a few minutes. If I was going to sum up where we are on housing, I would say what we need is a lot more housing. We need a lot more affordability, and we need a lot more focused assistance to our most vulnerable neighbors. That's how I'd sum up where we are. Obviously, we were in a crisis before the pandemic. Now we've got rent payments down, mortgages are in forbearance, folks owe landlords a check, and if help doesn't get out there soon, we're going to see, in my view, pretty much a tsunami of evictions. So passing emergency relief legislation is critical. People need help to be able to pay their rent arrears, keep the mortgage current, keep internet service for kids trying to learn online, parents working remotely, and they got to be able to visit a doctor if they need to. So that's what I'm spending my time on now. And there's real urgency. For example, we're going to have millions of unemployed workers go off an economic cliff in the middle of March if the Congress doesn't act quickly. So obviously, you're talking to somebody who's been in public service and believes housing development is absolutely crucial to the quality of life, having a strong economy, and it sure is vital to any kind of economic comeback. So a little bit about some past developments that you may not have heard about. At the end of 2020, Senator Cantwell, my seatmate, and I on the Finance Committee got a big win for the low-income housing tax credit by putting a floor underneath the value of the 4% credit. Evidence indicates that alone is going to add thousands of units of affordable housing in the production pipeline over the next few years. In fact, that 4% floor fix is a good periscope to what I'm going to keep doing in 2021. Over the next 2 years in particular, this Congress, we got to get America building housing again. And in that regard, I'll be introducing a piece of legislation that y'all have heard about before called the DASH Act, the Decent, Affordable, Safe Housing for All Act. And what really convinced me to do it is that a couple years ago, I learned about kids having to sleep in the woods at night in Oregon, where it gets damn rainy and cold, and people are really, up against the elements, and that's no way to learn and be able to be in a position to maintain your health. And I just said, we're not going to do that. I love my state so deeply, and we know that we can do better. And the DASH Act would provide vouchers to every family and child experiencing homelessness and build 1 million deeply affordable homes, because in my view, access to shelter is a fundamental human right. The DASH Act invests in ongoing funding for community-based supportive services, especially culturally supportive services, support for youth transitioning out of child welfare, because there are fantastic providers on the ground out there that need investment to make their jobs easier. It's also going to push states and localities to give developers regulatory relief when it comes to developing low and middle income housing, because so much zoning is profoundly exclusionary and contributes to segregation. But I really have those kids on my mind right now, those kids, out in the woods. And, we love our outdoors, and we know that winter, when you get rain, that's important as well, because it's critically important for everything from skiing to recreation in the summer and the like. But we got to make sure those kids get adequate shelter. So that's what the DASH Act's about. Let's take a couple of questions, and we just always appreciate the chance to work with you. Rick, Jeff, you guys want to just throw a few questions?
Senator, I would defer to either my chair-elect, or Mr. Sapkin here, if they have any quick questions. If not, I'm getting a few here.
You guys are like the Senate. You do a lot of yielding, and my distinguished colleague has a very important question and all that.
This is my job, Senator.
That's what I mean. Yeah, I got
we
the drift.
actually mean it.
I got the drift.
All right. Well, here's one. So, obviously, the COVID impact and is ravaging people. It's ravaging businesses and all. No surprise there. What do you see the role of the Finance Committee? Kind of in the short term on that, and then hopefully, we get this behind us, and then we're talking about either stimulus or income equality or other issues that I'm sure that you are looking ahead at. How do you divide those two?
Well, the first package that we're working on really involves the $2,000 checks. And that's what the Congress talked about in December. And that's what the Georgia Senate race was all about, where both the Democratic candidates and the Republican candidates recognized that, a lot of folks needed some help to get through till we're on the other side of the virus. So we're going to have those checks, expanded unemployment. I wrote the extra $600 per week each week, and brought the program into the 21st century, because essentially we had never covered gig workers and the self-employed and independent contractors. So I want to expand that. And then, of course, COVID. And what we are looking at there is a national strategy where the president and David Kessler called me a couple of days ago, the former FDA commissioner, and he's going to be heading up the the effort. But we need a partnership with the states. We need to use the Defense Production Act in order to produce what we need. We need to focus on the PPE, the protective equipment that our healthcare workers need, and we've got to deal with workforce. Now, in the Senate, because many of these measures are public health, Senator Patty Murray of Washington, who heads the committee over the public health programs, plays a vital role. At the Finance Committee, we have jurisdiction over Medicare, Medicaid, and employer-based coverage. So the two of us work very closely together on these issues. And as I say, we've really got a deadline here. Now, one of the things you're all going to hear about in the real estate, roundtable is, well, can't we just take, a little bit more time and see if we can, even if there is some back and forth between the political parties now, see if we can put together an arrangement that will allow us to move forward. My views are very explicit here. I usually get flack for being too bipartisan, and I would rather get to that first package with a bipartisan, effort. That is my first choice. But if there is an effort to drag things out, that was the case with the Affordable Care Act in 2009, months and months, and force a smaller package, which was always the case in 2009, then I believe you've got to take action quickly, in order to meet these urgent needs people have. I mean, this is money, for example, that is going to go to keep a roof over their head, keep their family fed. And let's just remember at the end of the year, all those holiday stories where parents were saying over Christmas time that they were giving up meals for their kids to eat. So Jeff, that may be a little longer answer than you wanted, but that's
I think
what we're thinking about.
Again, we want to be your partner on this. You and I have talked about this in the past. I've got a couple of three questions that I'll roll into one for you. They're kind of in the weeds, but not really. I mean, part of real estate's, we want to help businesses, and there is an esoteric part of the tax code dealing with REITs and how they're able to assist in a private setting manner their tenants who are struggling and have been hit hard. And so there is some legislation on the House is working its way over there that would allow REITs for a short period of time to put capital, if you will, into their struggling tenant in order to keep them afloat. And you don't necessarily have to respond to that. I just want to bring it to your attention and say, here's an example of the private sector wanting to help. And these are businesses that are probably not small businesses that qualify for the PPP program, and they're all leveraged out, so they can't go to traditional level. And so there's that issue. We'd love to talk with you about that.
Jeff,
the other issue.
Save some time. I'd like to hear about it. I will confess to not having seen anything, but I thought I saw some fleeting mention. Please get it to us and let me look at it.
We'll do. The other area is also, every business is going to be restructuring their debt. Values have changed and so on and so forth. And obviously, if you borrowed $100 and now it's restructured to where you owe 80, you've got $20 of income, and people acknowledge that. The issue is kind of how that is absorbed and when you have to pay it. And there's a number of people who would like to see the basis on their assets reduced by that $20 because they don't have the 20 today, but you're going to get it through a reduced ability on depreciation and other things. Again, no need to answer it right now.
No,
it's just flagging it for you.
I'm not one who runs around and says people who aren't in a position to pay, suddenly there should be some new arrangement to make that the focus of tax policy. What I've been concerned about, and I think you all know that, is that I think everybody has got to pay their fair share. There was a piece in the paper the other day that said that there were several hundred billionaires, that's with a B, who made enough money during the 1 year pandemic that if they were taxed at today's rates, and they actually paid those rates, that would be enough to take care of the stimulus checks for 1,000 people. So what I'm interested in is looking at those kinds of instances, Jeff, where it just departs from the basic fairness principle. Those are people making substantial sums of money. They're in a position to pay. And I don't think a United States senator can explain to a nurse who's treating COVID patients and pays taxes with every single paycheck how that person can avoid paying taxes. That's my view.
It's a very reasonable, responsible view, and I don't think you're going to get any pushback from us about that, sir.
Jeff, let's so because I know people want to ask some other questions. Let's just apropos of this question, you get me your example with respect to the REITs, and then the second one with respect to somebody whose basis changed or something like that. We'll look at it. Okay.
Excellent. And then then the other two questions that have popped up here on my screen, I'm like, the moderator here, sir. One is, on the campaign trail, President Biden listed a whole bunch of possible revenue increases and tax law changes. One is concerning the ability to trade properties in a like-kind exchange situation. And there seems to be a great misunderstanding that every trade would be a sale if it could be a sale. And that's certainly not the case. And then there's also the situation, I think it's not appreciated that in these cases, when you trade assets, there's a lot, then the person acquiring the asset has more capital to put into the asset and improve it. And the final thing is, lo and behold, these trades are substantially done by minority owned businesses and women-owned businesses. Again, no need to answer it. I'm just flagging it for you as a concern. And the final thing, sir, is just whatever is done, and our industry experienced it very much back in 1986, that Tax Reform Act. But whatever is done, we would urge, obviously, a prospective, not any retroactivity thing. And people are still burned about that. And I got a question on it just now, so I want to raise that with you.
Yeah. Let me take up both points. I gather that the first sort of batch of questions relates to the 1031 debate. Is that right?
The first two relate to how we can help the economy in a private sector way. The last two on like-kind exchanges and retroactivity relate to just concerns about tax policy changes.
Yeah. Well, I know that there's been another little outbreak of trade press speculation about the 1031s, and I'm waiting to see the details of what the president may wish to do there. We talk to the Biden economic folks pretty frequently, and I'm not up on any special knowledge about this speculation. I know there was the proposal by the campaign last summer. I will tell you right now, we're working pretty much around the clock on the first COVID package. It would seem to me to be very unlikely that this kind of proposal would make its way into a COVID relief package. So that's kind of my take on that.
Senator, if we were in the situation where there could be standing ovations, you would have just received, well, you would have received several so far, but.
Well, I'm sure that I will probably take positions and make statements that will cause people to want to retract any standing ovation that they give now. Look,
in the spirit of what you just said, sir, about us getting you paper, we do have some studies that we wouldn't ask you, we would never ask, we don't ask people to do things without data.
No, no,
We have 1031 data that we'll get you so that you.
I'm going to have to get out the door pretty quick, but here's my point. You know, I come from a state that has always believed deeply in housing. It was all about wood products, and we understood that there was a real multiplier for communities and for people, putting a roof over their head, and I still believe that. Some of you know that in the last Congress, apropos of LIHTC and our expanding it, I've actually proposed MITEC. It's the middle income housing tax credit. So, you know, we think that housing is one of those really core values I talked about in my remarks. I'll be them short, that I believe housing is a basic human right. And as I say, you know, whenever I talk about this subject, I think about those kids who are sleeping in the woods, and school buses would come to the woods and pick them up. And I say, damn it, we can do better than that. And that's what led to the DASH Act. And, you know, apropos of DASH, we're not going to get decent, affordable, safe housing for everybody in the next 20 minutes, as much as I would like to do it. But I want to get started, and we'll be working with you. Okay? If the program's wrapping up,
Only Chairman Ron Wyden could get Rick Sapkin out of the woods for this. So thank you very much.
Deborah, were you trying to ask a question?
I was going to thank you for being here, and also just ask you, with the COVID relief that you're looking at, how are you prioritizing being fast and generalized in your relief versus being more targeted to the specific households and businesses who have actually been negatively affected by COVID? Because
I wish I could give a short answer to that. I think on balance, if I were to sum it up, just like I said, my principles are more housing, more affordability, more focus on the vulnerable. I'm just not going to Monday morning quarterback people like David Kessler and the scientists. And what we're trying to do is come up with a national plan that will be grounded in good science. I don't think you want your United States senator, albeit 100 of us who think we have the answers to everything, to sit there on the floor of the United States Senate and go, the money goes here and the money goes there. You know, we'll have input about whether the direction is fundamentally sound and meets the priorities. But I'm not going to, as a guy who believes deeply in science and has worked hard in those science precincts, I'm not going to let 100 United States senators take the place of good science. Okay? Let's put this.
we appreciate everything you've done and look forward to working with you.
Rick,
Bye.